what I've learned about attention deficit hyperactivity disorder, and particularly how the people it affects are treated in the school system. Take a moment to think back to second grade. The teacher explains how to solve a word problem. You know, those awful problems that start out with, if Johnny has 10 apples, and if Susie has 3 apples, you listen, but your lovable dog Max pops into your head. And you spend a few seconds or minutes, you're never sure how long, smiling to yourself about how you love Max. The next thing you know, the teacher calls on you to give the answer to the word problem. You are panicked. For one thing, you do not recall what she said. And you hate word problems because you reread them 3 times before you can even understand the problem. You also don't like being called on by the teacher because all the other kids laugh, since you hardly ever get the right answer. If this scenario is repeated multiple times a day, over weeks and months and years, you begin to think you are dumb. You doubt your ability to read, to do math problems, to answer questions, to do anything the other kids think is okay. You decide that you are a loser at age 7. Although this may not be my specific testimony, this is my story, and the story of 6.4 million kids just like me. Attention Deficit Hyperactivity Disorder, or ADHD, is a brain disorder marked by an ongoing pattern of inattention and/or hyperactivity, impulsivity, that interferes with functioning or development. This widespread phenomenon does not just affect school, it affects all aspects of life, some of which include the following: chronic lateness, tendency to procrastinate, trouble starting and finishing projects, poor organization skills, frequently forgetting appointments, commitments, or deadlines, constantly losing or misplacing things such as keys, wallet, or phone, or documents, and underestimating the time it will take to complete tasks. ADHD has become a rising epidemic in the United States. It is estimated that 11% of children now have this learning disability. Though it is the most commonly diagnosed neurodevelopmental disorder of childhood, society as a whole is frighteningly unaware of the reality of ADHD, and therefore, students with ADHD are not getting equal education. In our school system, it is more important now than ever for people to be educated about ADHD and to believe in the legitimacy of my impairment. I am not a bad kid, I am not dumb, and I have the right to my education, just like everyone else. By law, everyone has the right to equal education. CHADD.org states clearly that ADHD can affect learning and development from a very young age. Child-defined, public school systems, some private schools, and even colleges and universities are required to help students with ADHD and other disabilities rise to meet educational challenges. Children with all 3 presentations of ADHD, which are predominantly inattentive, predominantly hyperactive, and combined presentation, may face many challenges in a traditional school setting and may qualify for educational services and accommodations. 2 laws in particular, the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act, or IDEA, and Section 504 of the Rehabilitation Act of 1973, are specifically designed to ensure that students with disabilities receive equal access to education and school activities. Both acts guarantee a free and appropriate public education to all children, regardless of ability. From simple accommodations to special education services in typical classrooms with supplemental services, the laws are in place to provide valuable services to eligible children with disabilities. However, due to insufficient belief and understanding of ADHD, this is not always the case. Young children spend most of their waking hours in school. Their teachers and peers significantly impact who they are. When a student with ADHD grows up with teachers and peers who don't believe in psychiatric disorders, their chances increase that they will drop out of high school and join the 2.3 million students with ADHD who already have. That makes 2.3 million people who are not getting access to higher education and being forced to have jobs at or below the poverty level. The average monetary cost to society for any high school dropout over their lifetime is $388,000. When that cost is multiplied by 2.3 million children, however, the average cost is $892.4 billion. When we choose not to believe in psychiatric disorders, it hurts America as a whole. Exclusion of children with ADHD does not only occur in the United States. In the UK, nearly 40% of children with attention deficit hyperactivity disorder have been excluded from school, according to the results of a survey. The survey of 526 families revealed that in 11% of cases, the exclusion was permanent, and 2/3 of the parents questioned believed their child's ability to achieve at school was very affected by ADHD. Research reflects a lack of resources and support available for children with ADHD and their families after it revealed that more than 2/3 of parents questioned did not have access to a local ADHD clinic, nurse, or advisory teacher. In Saudi Arabia, 15% of children have ADHD. That is 2.5 million Saudi children that suffer every day from a clinical disorder. A popular report circled around a few years ago that tells the story of a Saudi child's struggle with ADHD. An 11-year-old boy from an influential province was said to be incapable of passing the first grade. After 5 years of looping through the scholarly hell thinking he was stupid or just not trying hard enough, his parents found the problem. It had become evident that their son had been struggling with ADHD and simply couldn't get through school without help. The Okaz Saudi Gazette has proved time and time again there is a drastic need to educate teachers and parents about learning disabilities. In a Saudi school teacher survey, it was found that, quote, most teachers are untrained to identify children with ADHD and cannot differentiate between children with learning disabilities and children with poor academic performance. Parents interviewed about the topic said that no thought is given to these children who struggle with learning disabilities, specifically noting dyslexia and ADHD, both of which do not affect general intelligence. In South Africa, more than 200,000 kids have little to no access to ADHD services. Dr. Schumann, an ADHD doctor in South Africa, says that many children who suffer from ADHD don't have access to medical care, especially those in rural areas. Their symptoms go undetected, which is detrimental to the full development of the child. Although mental health clinics exist in the public sector, children with ADHD often never reach this point in diagnosis and treatment due to lack of awareness and knowledge in their communities. They are never screened for ADHD and may be labeled as naughty or stupid, or just silently fall out of the education system and only come to our attention when absorbed in the criminal justice system. They, however, are currently trying to get free ADHD screenings across South Africa and trying to raise awareness on the severity of the psychological disorder. In China, psychiatrists have acknowledged that ADHD has been around for decades. Parents are more willing to accept the ADHD diagnosis because there is intense pressure in the Chinese culture for academic success. Parents in China are very quick to understand that hyperactive behaviors are detrimental to school achievement. Since doing well in school is socially prized, parents are quickly willing to give their children ADHD medication. Ritalin is actually referred to by teachers in China as the be wise drug. In the United States, 6.4 million children are diagnosed with ADHD. This is a cause for alarm for the Center of Disease Control and the American Academy of Pediatrics. Both agencies are doing extensive research to determine the cause and come up with effective treatments. It is estimated that $31.6 billion is the combined annual cost for healthcare and lost workdays due to ADHD. United States researchers believe many things can contribute to an ADHD diagnosis. The number one finding is that genetics play a significant role. Other factors being researched are brain injuries or low birth weight, premature birth, prenatal alcohol and tobacco use, and exposure to environmental toxins. Research does not support the popularly held belief that ADHD is caused by eating too much sugar, watching too much television, parenting, or social and environmental factors such as poverty or family chaos. Of course, many things, including these, might make symptoms worse, especially in certain people, but the evidence is not strong enough to conclude that they're the main causes of ADHD. In California, ADHD isn't tracked like it is in other areas. Students diagnosed with ADHD are combined with other students and put into a broader category called specific learning disabilities. As of December 2015, 288,294 students have been placed into this category. This reclassification is due to thousands of complaints from parents that their children were being denied necessary services and not being protected from bullying. California goes to great lengths to support students with learning disabilities. ADHD can be expensive for school districts, as the services for a single student can cost several $1,000s a year. Some research, though, has found the hidden costs to not treating the disorder are much higher than giving students the much needed support. Of the 96,500 people who live in Sutter County, 26% of them are school-age children. Sutter County has a 10.5% high school dropout rate. Although this is slightly lower than the California average, it is still unacceptable. This means 2,412 students will drop out of high school. And if 8% of all children in America have ADHD, that would mean that 193 students will not have a high school education due to ADHD. According to the Children's Health Report of Sutter County, the main focus for Sutter County leadership is improving socioeconomic status, children's health, and raising test scores. These are all excellent things to focus on, but don't do a lot to help students with ADHD. The Bible clearly shows how we should behave towards all mankind, which does not discount those with learning disabilities or otherwise. Choosing not to believe in ADHD is choosing to believe that God has made a mistake in creating 6.4 million of his children in the United States alone. As Jesus passed by, he saw a man blind from birth, and his disciples asked him, "Rabbi, who sinned, this man or his parents, that he was born blind?" Jesus answered, "It was not that this man sinned, or his parents, but that the works of God might be displayed in him." Throughout the history of the church, however, there has been a stigma around all disabilities. Some medieval priests and scholars believed that the body was corrupted by sin, and therefore condemnation from God took the form of illness. Therefore, medical physicians were asked to hear the patient's confessions so that their soul would be cured before the body was assessed. In today's church, we have begun to come back to Jesus' true teaching, but there are still some who believe disabilities are a direct link to a poor relationship with Christ. The fundamental principles of the Eastern Orthodox, all of the churches imply this topic as well. The Eastern Orthodox Church teaches that denial is still widespread in our society when it comes to the invisible child. But for these families, the diagnoses are very real. These disorders are genetic and are recognized within the medical community by commitment to treatment and research. Parents don't want their kids to have a brain disorder any more than they want their kids to have any other disease. Unfortunately, the symptoms of these disorders often manifest themselves in what appears to be willful behavior. Rather than helping families with children with these disorders, we often exclude them from our communities by being judgmental. These families need to have spiritual support to face the sometimes overwhelming challenges that these disorders bring to their households. Similarly, the Catholic Church believes in the dignity of the human person is the foundation of a moral vision for society, and that people have a right and a duty to participate in society, seeking together the common good and well-being of all. Therefore, every person has a fundamental right to life and to those things required for human decency. Furthermore, the Methodist Church calls Methodists to a new birth of awareness, the need to accept, include, receive the gifts of, and respond to the concerns of those persons with intellectual, physical, psychological, and neurological disabilities, including their families. And because these people make up a large part of the community of our Lord, and believing that the Church is most faithful to the teachings and example of Jesus when it expresses love in concrete ways with those who are marginalized, neglected, avoided, or persecuted by society. The Baptist denomination states in their handbook that we are to be mindful that over the centuries, persons with physical, emotional, mental, and developmental disabilities have been subjected to mockery, disparagement, and denial of their human and civil rights. And aware that over the centuries, the Church often expressed a condescending attitude which treats such persons as objects of good works, and recognizing that their consequences of such attitudes are not only demeaning, dehumanizing, and counterproductive to the emotional, social, cognitive, and spiritual well-being of persons with disabilities, but also contrary to belief that humankind is created in God's image. The American Baptist Churches calls to recognize persons with disabilities as integral members of the Christian fellowship and to take immediate affirmative action to enable their full inclusion in society and in local congregations and in church organizations. The school system is doing a great deal for those with ADHD and other mental disabilities, but is simply not enough. Our teachers need to be informed on the legitimacy of ADHD and other learning disabilities. We as citizens have a duty to plead with the California Commission on Teacher Credentialing to amend the credential requirements to include classes on understanding learning disabilities and coping strategies for children who are struggling to learn. We also need to nationally raise awareness about ADHD. This is a rising epidemic, and people need to learn the symptoms. School districts and pediatricians should be putting on workshops for the parents of these children so parents can be equipped to help their kids. No brain is alike. Each of us needs to educate ourselves and also act upon our knowledge. Our call is to be understanding, not judgmental, and active in the right direction. Be activists in the government and lobby for education by contacting the California Commission on Teacher Credentialing, the Marysville Joint Unification School District and the Yuba City Unified School District office at the addresses I've listed in my pamphlet. We all can and must be the change, not only in Yuba Sutter, but nationwide. If we do not come to terms with ADHD, our first story will continue on and on to more kids. It's time to accept people who learn differently. Children with ADHD deserve their right to equal education just like everyone else. But equality in education does not mean everyone gets the same thing. It means everyone gets what they need. Thank you all for your time, and are there any questions?